Hey guys, and welcome back to another Unreal Engine 4 tutorial. In today's video I'm going to be going over creating level bounds, so when you were to leave this area, it's going to come up on screen saying out of bounds or return to play area, and if the player doesn't get back into the correct level area in time, it will just respawn them back inside of the area. So let me hit play and show you what we're going to make today. So you can see this just looks like a normal level. You can't actually physically see the bounds, which again, you don't normally in these games. And then if we were to walk over here, we'll eventually leave the bounds, and you'll see that it comes up on the screen saying return to play area, and it's counting down from 10. If I were to walk back in, that's going to come off screen, and if we were to wait another 5 seconds for when the timer would have gone down, nothing is going to happen as we are now back inside of the play area. However, if we walk out of it again, and then we do wait for the 10 seconds to go all the way down, you should see that we will respawn back into the play area, and you can decide where you want the player to spawn. For me, I've just set a general spawn point, and you see it is gone there, like so. So this is what we're doing today, and again I've set it up so anywhere outside of the current area is out of bounds. It's not just one direction like this. So again, these are the current bounds of the level, and you can see this arrow here is pointing to the inside. So again, this is what we'll be creating and setting up today. So without further ado, let me delete this code and I'll show you how I've done it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create the widget, which is actually going to come up on screen and tell the player to go back into the play area. So to do this, we're going to right click, go to user interface, create a widget blueprint, and I'm just going to name this one bounds widget, as that makes sense to me. Opening it up straight away. In here, I'm just going to simply get some text, placing it on screen. I'm going to tick size content, and in the text, I'm just going to write return to play area, or you can put out of bounds or anything along those lines. But return to play area is going to work fine for me. And I'm going to increase the size to, let's say, 50, also giving it an outline of 5. So again, you can obviously put anything you want on this screen and customize it to get it perfect for you, but I'm just going to keep it nice and basic, also making sure to anchor it so it doesn't move away from where it's supposed to be. So again, customize this to get it looking perfect for you. I'm also going to add in another text, and this is going to be for the countdown. So what I'm going to do is in this, I'm just going to write 10 ... as that is how I want to format it, and that's just to give me a reference of how big it's going to be. Once again, I'm going to tick size content, increase it a bit more to maybe 40, and again, give it another outline of 3, let's say. What I'm also going to do is change the justification to be align text center, so it's always going to be centered on the screen. So no matter what we change the text to, that will always look good. And again, I'm going to anchor it to the center of the screen, or where it should be, like so. Once again, I've just made this quite quickly, just to show you what it's going to look like. Obviously change this again to get it how you want. So I think that's going to be good for me. I'm going to compile, save that. Select the text again for the countdown, so for me it just says 10. On text, I'm going to hit bind and create binding. Because again, we want this text to count down, going from 10 to 0. So what I'm going to do is move the return node out, drag out of the return node, and get a format text. Because what I want to do is I want it to write the amount of time remaining, and then a ... You can just have the time remaining if you want, in which case you don't need the format text. You can just input the time straight in here. But for me, I want the format text, so I'm going to do the open bracket with a little squiggle on. I'll put it on screen now. Write time, or time remaining, close brackets, then just ... So what this is going to do is it's going to input this time here, then write ... What the time wants to be is we want to create a new variable, naming this time remaining, or just time, whatever you want. And I'm going to change this to be an integer. And we're going to compile, save that. Then connecting this integer of time remaining into time on the format text. And the reason we've done it as an integer instead of a float is because I want this to be a whole number. So I want it to be 10, 9, 8, not 10, 9.5, 9.3, anything like that. I want it to be whole numbers. So this is all we need to do in the widget. We've set up the text, and we've also created a binding, so it's going to actually count down, going from 10, and I'm saying 10, it doesn't have to be 10. It could be 5 or 15 or 30, whatever you want, and we'll go over changing that later on. But again, this is all we need to do in the widget, so we're now going to close this. And the next thing we want to do is open up our character blueprint. And this is where we can actually start doing some of the coding for the countdown. So for me, it's going to be content, third person BP, blueprints, third person character. In here, we're going to go off event begin play, so we're going to hold down P, left click to get it. But if you've already used it, then just go to event begin play, hold down S, left click to get a sequence, with the code that you have now going to then 0, and this new code I'm about to do going into then 1. But I don't need that as I haven't used it yet. Off of event begin play, we're going to get a create widget, input in the widget we just created, which again for me, I named it bounds widget, like so. Then I'm going to right click the return value, promote it to a variable, naming this bounds widget reference. And that's so we can nice and easily access it later on. So we can put it on screen, take it off screen, and also change the time remaining integer which we created in there. But we don't need to put it on screen just yet, because when we first start the game, we're not going to be out of bounds. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to create a spawn location so that when the player respawns after being out of bounds too long, this is the location. Now you can obviously set this up however you want, so if you have a checkpoint mechanic, you can just make them go back to the previous checkpoint, or maybe go back from where they exit bounds, but I'm just going to do it like this instead. So I'm going to create a variable, naming this spawn location, sorry, not locatin, and we can change this to be a vector. Compile, save, and we're going to set this off of event begin play again, like so. The location, I'm simply just going to do get actor location. So where the player first spawns is then going to be where they respawn if they're out of bounds for too long. Compile, save, and that's all we need to do here. We created the widget reference and created the spawn location. So what we're going to do next is actually the out of bounds and inbound and the countdown and all that code, which is the main part of this video. So let's scroll down underneath this and find some empty space. Right click, add a custom event, and I'm going to name this one out of bounds, or left level bounds, left map bounds, whatever makes most sense to you. Straight away out of this, we're going to hold down O, left click to get a do once, connecting that into out of bounds like so. Out of completed, what we want to do is put this widget on screen to tell the player that they are now out of bounds. So we're going to get the bounds widget reference, get that, and just simply add to viewport, connecting that into the completed of the do once there. And that's the basic part done, but what we also need to do is again start a timer counting down. So very simply what we can do is drag out of this and set timer by event. The event we'll do in a second, but the time here is how long you want the timer to be. So again, at the start of the video, I did it with an example of 10 seconds, but you can do it with 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever you want. But again, I'm going to do it as 10, but just input that number in there of what you want it to be. It's going to count down from this. Then out of this, we're going to come out to the return value and get timer remaining time by handle. So see how long is left on the timer. We're going to truncate this to turn it into an integer, so it's basically rounding it. And this is then going to set the time remaining integer which we created in the widget. So again, we need to get a reference to our bounds widget reference here, drag out of this, and set time remaining. Connecting that into the set timer by event, and the integer is going to be this truncate value here. So again, however long is left in the timer is going to go into the time remaining variable. However, this is only going to fire once, so this will set it to 10, because that's what it's going to happen when it first starts, and nothing else. So we need to create a little loop here. So we're going to hold down D, left click to get a delay, connecting that into the set time remaining with a duration of 1. So it's going to update every 1 second. And to completed is going to go into the set time remaining there, like so. So what it's going to do is go back and update this variable every single second, so whenever we need it to. Because again, that's the only time it's really going to change is every 1 second, so that's when we're going to update it. So we can compile and save that. And the reason we've got that error is because we haven't set up this event for this set timer event yet, but we're going to do that in a second. So if we drag out of the event, we can just add a custom event, and I'm going to name this respawn. Because what's going to happen is when this timer runs out, so it goes down to 0, it's going to fire off this custom event here, which again for me is I wanted to respawn the player back at the starting location. So all I'm going to do is drag out set actor location, and I'm going to set the new location to be the spawn location which we created earlier on. So I'm just going to move this up a bit as well, compile, save, and that's good. So again, what's going to happen is when we go out of bounds, we're going to start a timer, updating it every 1 second on the screen so the player can see it counting down. And if it gets down to 0, what's going to happen is the player is going to respawn back at the spawn location which you've set. So now we also need to do it for going back inbounds. So if the player leaves and goes back in, we obviously don't want it to respawn them once the timer finishes, and we don't want it to still say on screen, return to play area. So we're going to do something similar to this. We're going to right click, add a custom event, naming this inbounds or return to area, whatever you want. And out of this, we're going to hold down S, left click to get a sequence, with then 1 going into the reset of this do once. So once we go back inbounds, we can once again go out of bounds, which will restart the timer, put the widget back on screen, and all that good stuff. But then 0, we want to actually be going back inbounds. So this is actually more simplistic to the out of bounds. All we're going to do is drag out of the bounds widget reference and remove from parent, which is going to take the widget off of the screen. And we also just want to stop this timer. So we're going to come out of the return value and just pause timer by handle, and that is all we need to do, connecting that to remove from parent there. So again, that's now going to pause the timer, meaning it's no longer counting down, which means this respawn custom event will not fire off once it reaches 0, because it's not going to reach 0. And then when we go back out of bounds, it's going to restart the timer again by creating a new one. So we can compile, save, and that is all the code we need to do in the character blueprint, because again, what we've done is we've created a custom event for going out of bounds and a custom event for going in bounds, and these are both going to be updating the time on screen and also respawning the player if they've been out for too long. So we can now close this, as again, that is all we need to do in there. Now we're going to go back to content, and what we're going to do is now create the blueprint for actually defining the level bounds. So I'm going to right click, create a blueprint class, creating an actor, and I'm going to name this one bounds VP or level bounds, whatever you want, opening that up straight away. Now you can do this part however you want really to get it look perfect for you, but I'm going to go for what I'm going to create, and you can obviously follow along with this as well. So I'm going to add a component, adding a cube, like so, and what I'm going to do is just make it a little bit thinner, but keeping the other sizes the same. Compile and save that. And what I'm also going to do is add a box collision. So add box collision like this, and I'm going to move it out a little bit, like so, also making it a bit thinner. And I'm also going to scale it up to be a similar size to the cube, so it's nice and similar, like so. So the cube has a size of 1, 0.25, and 1 on the XYZ, and the box collision has a size of 1.5, 0.5, 1.5 on the XYZ as well. This box collision I'm going to rename to be in bounds. And I'm going to select it, hit Ctrl+C, hit Ctrl+V to duplicate it, moving it to the other side of the cube, and renaming this to out bounds, or out of bounds. Compile and save that. So what we've got now is we've got a wall separating two different box collisions. If you're on one side of the wall, you are inside of the level bounds. If you're on the other side of the wall, you are outside of the level bounds. So I hope that makes sense. You don't need the wall here, I've just got that as a visual representation of where the actual division is from going in and out of bounds, just to make it easier for us creating the level. I'm going to select the inbound so I know which side this actually is. So I know that this side of the wall is inside of the level. So I'm going to add a component, and I'm going to add an arrow, rotating it and moving it to be on this side, like so, and I'm also going to scale up to have an arrow size of, let's say, 5. And the reason I'm doing that is to again make it easier for us creating a level. So now when we're making a level and defining the level bounds, we easily know that anything on this side of the wall is inside the bounds, and anything on this side of the wall is outside of the bounds. So I hope that all makes sense. So we're going to compile, save, and now we're going to go over to the construction script. And we're going to the construction script, so what we can do is we can nice and easily increase and decrease the size of the level bounds. But also one thing I want to do actually is we're going to select the cube, and we're going to make sure we tick hidden in game so you can't see it in the game, and we're also going to change the collision presets from block or dynamic to no collision. So essentially in the game this wall isn't actually there, it's just something we see as a developer to again get a nice easy split between them. I'm going to change the material to a transparent material which I've created, which I'll show you how I made it at the very end. But I just made it transparent matte like so, just so again I can nice and easily see through it, just to again make it easier to build upon. But back to the construction script and increasing, decreasing the size, what we're going to do is select the in and out bounds, drag out of this, and set their relative scale 3D, because again we want to increase the size of them. Connecting that in the construction script, right clicking on new scale and splitting the structure pin, connecting both bounds into the target. Then we're going to drag out the cube, and again set the relative scale 3D, splitting the structure pin once again, connecting that into here like so. So now what we need to do is we need to actually define what these sizes are going to be. So the Y scale isn't going to change. So if I select the cube, you can see Y is 0.25, so I'm going to set that in there like so. And if I select the bounds, the Y is 0.5, so I'm going to set that on there as well, because I don't want to change the width of it, just the length and height. So if we compile, save, let's figure out the length and height. So I'm going to create a new variable, naming this size or length, whatever you want, and I'm going to change this to a float. Compile that. I'm going to give it a default value of 1. I'm going to drag this in, get size, and this can go straight into new scale 3dx on the cube. So this goes straight into the X for the cube, but it doesn't want to go straight into the X for the bounds. What we want to do is first is get a float multiplied by a float, and that is going to go into the X of the bounds instead. And what this value wants to be is it's going to be 1.5625. Now the reason I've done that is because if we select the cube, you see that the X is 1. Let me also zoom in here. Well, you can't see it. Let me disconnect this, compile. you see that the x of the cube is 1, but the x of the bounds is 1.5. So if we increase these by the same amount, the bounds are going to get bigger than the cube. So we want to make sure that we're increasing this by a similar amount, which I did some maths and figured out it was 1.5625. So again, this now means they're going to increase at the same size, making sure it always stays the same size and doesn't increase unproportionately. So if you have different sizes, you're going to want to do some different math to figure out getting it perfect for you. But again, if you're following along with me, it should be the same, like so. And to do the height, it's basically the same thing. So I'm going to create a new variable, naming this one height, leaving it as a float. Again, I'm going to set the default value to 1, dragging this into here, get height, going straight into the z of the cube. But for the z of the bounds, it's again going to be a multiplication of 1.5625 going to the z, like so. We can compile and save that, and we're also going to click these little eyeballs next to size and height to make them editable so we can change them in the level. And this is now how we're going to be increasing and decreasing the size of our bounds. So again, we can custom define the size of our level. So now we're going to move on to the final part, and that's actually telling the program when we have left the bounds and when we've re-entered them. So that's going to be on the event graph, delete these two nodes, right click on inbounds, add event, add on component begin overlap, right click on outbounds, add event, add on component, begin overlap once again. So we have the begin overlap on inbounds and outbounds. We don't need the end overlap, just begin, because again we want to see which side of the wall we are currently on. Out of the other X of both of these, we're going to cast to our character, which for me is the third person character, but for you it could be third, first, or whatever you've named it, and again that's for both of them. Then on begin overlap for the inbounds, as third person character, we're going to call function inbounds, the custom event we created earlier, which is doing all the code again we set up for creating the widget and the timer and all that good stuff. Then begin overlap on outbounds is going to call function out of bounds, compile, save, and that is all the code done which we need to do. So again, this is just defining which side of the wall we're on, which is showing if we're inbounds or out of bounds. Save that, close this, and I'm also just going to open up the transparent material, which again is simply just a color, making sure that the material has a blend mode of translucent, and I've just inputted 0.5 into the opacity. And that is all I've done, just so we can see through the wall slightly while creating the level. And now all that's left to do is just put these bounds into the map. So we can just drag it in like so. You can see the arrow is on that side, so I need to rotate it around. So this is the inside of the map. And you see we have size and height. If we increase the size, you can see it's now increasing like so. And this has stayed perfectly aligned like that. And we can also increase the height as well, and you can kind of see through it as I've made it a little bit transparent. So I think that is going to be good for this side of the map. If I hold down Alt, drag out, I can duplicate it, rotate it around, and now we have this as another level bound. If I do the same thing, rotate it around, this is again another wall for the inside of the map. And you can again obviously put these wherever you want and as many as you want, so you can put them at an angle like that, so you have different ways of setting this up. But obviously just move this about to get it perfect for how you want your map bounds to look. You're going to want to make sure that the corners are kind of perfect and flush like so. So I'm going to move all these into position which I want, and I'll get back to you. So I've got something like this. It's a little bit of an odd shape, but I'm just showing that it doesn't just have to be a basic square. You can choose whatever shape you want really. And obviously if you use different static meshes as well, you can maybe get different sizes and different shapes. But this is what I've got, so if we were to hit play, what we can do is if we walk over here, you see that if we move out of the level bounds, it's going to come up on screen saying return to play area, counting all the way down from 10, and once this reaches 0, we should go back to the starting area which we originally spawned in, and this should come off screen perfectly like so, except it hasn't come off of screen. So let's have a look at why. I think what I did do was I didn't call a correct custom event. So if we to open up our character blueprint again, you'll see that on respawn, what we need to also do is after set actor location, we need to call function inbounds. Just to tell the code, we have now re-entered the bounds. So if we close this, we'll try this once again. If we're to walk out of bounds, actually let's go over this way this time to show it still works no matter which direction we go in. It's going to start counting down from 10, so return to play area 10, 9, 8, going all the way down. Once it reaches 0, we'll go back over there towards the play area, and this will come off screen perfectly again, like so. You'll see that works perfectly. So I think that'll be it for this video. So we've done everything we want to do. We've set up a system which we can create level bounds. If we're to walk out of it, it says return to play area, counting down from 10, and we can walk back in, it will go off screen and we won't respawn. And again, if we're out for too long, the player's going to die or they're going to respawn, whatever you want to set it up to as really. But again, this works perfectly. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, be sure to like and subscribe down below. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.